All right, so it is not just Nancy Pelosi who has been hit by a thunderbolt literally on the road to Damascus. A lot of people have been seeing the light on Israel all of a sudden, all at the same time. It's kind of remarkable. So we've seen Nancy join 40 House Democrats. Elizabeth Warren suggested Israel's actions in Gaza could be ruled as a genocide by international courts. And it's not just elected officials. It is media pundits that you would never expect. This is from Suleiman Ghali, posted this. The cracks in the walls of the dam are getting bigger. Former Condoleezza Rice advisor and NSC spokesperson Elise Jordan erupts at President Biden's unwillingness to condition weapons aid to Israel. Keep in mind, this is a former Condoleezza Rice advisor. She worked in arguably the most criminal administration this nation has ever seen.
This has been bubbling up from behind the scenes for a while. President Biden, frankly, is furious at Prime Minister Netanyahu. But yet still his administration has not conditioned weapons sales, conditioned aid. They haven't done it yet. Now, maybe this is the moment that comes. This also happens just, we think, a week or two perhaps before this Rafah offensive, which really could be a flashpoint.
Okay, I'm so sick of hearing how upset President Biden is. The buck stops with him. If he wants to stop arms sales, if he wants to stop the bombs that are indiscriminately killing civilians, he can. He has the power. We don't need him going and his aides going to reporters and talking all background about how upset they are. What happened yesterday is still going to happen. At Mika's conference, the head of the Palestinian Red Crescent spoke, and she was incredibly moving. This was in Abu Dhabi. And she spoke about the difficulty of aid getting in the country, period, from the north or south. And she described a process that was kind of like the TSA changing the rules every single day, going through airport security. Until those checkpoints are working and aid is going through, we don't need to be giving any more arms sale or money. It needs to stop. It needs to be conditional. It's ridiculous that it's going on unchecked and unfettered, and we're sitting around and talking how upset we are while we hemorrhage billions of dollars.
It's the worst of all worlds right now.
Well, all right, so when she says what happened yesterday, she's referring to the WCK attack.
That's the World Kitchen. What does it stand for?
World, what is it?
World Central Kitchen.
World Central Kitchen.
That's that Andre.
Same organization that Pelosi's friend runs. All right, so that's what she's talking about when she says what happened yesterday. So now you got Richard Haass, no more of a swamp-dwelling deep state ghoul than Richard Haass. This is actually another part of the same segment. Let's see what he had to say about this.
Empty. It's 6 months. We're reaching the 6-month milestone of this war. That's one fact to begin with. And two things have happened in the last few days. One is these attacks are continuing, and yet so are U.S. arms transfers to Israel without conditions. They've been going on for 6 months. Why does Israel need 2,000-pound bombs to be used in high-density populated areas?
I can tell you why.
10 days ago, what does Israel do? It expropriates 2,000.
Because they want to slaughter as many Palestinians as they can. Okay, keep going.
Acres of land in the West Bank for settlement construction. Where is the White House reaction to that? That is how you undo even the possibility, Joe was talking about it, of one day getting to a two-state solution. If you're going to have a Palestinian state, the last I checked, states are built on territory. If the territory isn't there to build it on, you can talk about two states till the cows come home. You don't have it. Where's the administration reaction to that? So at some point, the words become empty, and the Biden administration is very close to having reached a point where their criticism of Israel is too much for the same people who criticize Chuck Schumer, but it's not nearly enough to affect the course of what is going on. That is the worst of all possible worlds.
It looks weak and empty.
Wow, Richard Haass. He's the president emeritus of the Council on Foreign Frickin' Relations.
Right.
Are you kidding me?
No more deep state credentials
So how does this
than that.
So how does this keep going on? So if you got people from Condoleezza Rice and Richard Haass, I mean, come on.
But this is very recent. This was very quick. They flipped on a dime, and that's what we're going to look at. Why did they flip on a dime? Okay, so Morning Joe, surely Morning Joe is going to take Israel's side in any conversation.
Why did Benjamin Netanyahu send the head of Mossad to Doha 3 weeks before the worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust and told Qatar to continue funding Hamas?
I think, if anything, October 7 shattered that concept. And it's my understanding.
But you just said you always knew they were Nazis. I always knew they were Nazis. I would never give. We were always angry that Qatar funded Hezbollah and Hamas. I want to know, why did Benjamin Netanyahu do that? Let me ask you this. Why did Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump know in 2018 the sources of Hamas's illicit funding, and they still did nothing? They wanted that money to get to Hamas. I'd like to know why, because we don't know in America. Have there been any investigations in Israel at this point?
I'm sure we'll investigate it, and I totally agree with you. That Qatar is a wolf in sheep's clothes.
No.
And no, I love that part. I love that part. That is so typical Zionist propaganda technique to deflect.
No.
Oh, yes. No, Qatar.
He's asking about Benjamin Netanyahu.
Right. They're so used to being able to get away with this kind of bullshit that they're actually pretty incompetent once they get challenged. They're used to being not able to just make this completely irrational deflection.
Why is Joe Scarborough acting like he just found this out? He's known this. I've known this.
Well, we're getting to that. Because this article came out in December that he's referencing.
Yeah.
The New York Times article that covered that. And there have been other articles. But I mean,
suitcases.
An article they would pay attention to has been out since December.
Okay.
No. I must correct you. Benjamin Netanyahu was asked by the leaders of Qatar, do you want us, Qatar, to give money to Hamas? This was in September. And Netanyahu's representative said, yes, of course.
Okay. All right. So,
okay. Wow.
So we got into in the previous segment how Pelosi is a personal friend and supporter of Jose Andres. Now, I want to make it clear before we get into the rest of this segment. The intention here is not in any way to minimize the heroism of the World Central Kitchen workers who lost their lives. Is it not in any way to mock or denigrate them? Those people have a kind of courage I would never know. I mean, I would not be there knowing what I know about the Israeli military, which I'm sure they knew more about it than I did. That is not the point of the segment. The point of the segment is coverage, media bias, and the bias of our political class towards certain kinds of people and not others, what Noam Chomsky calls worthy and unworthy victims. So we already knew, this article is February 28th, that Gaza's death toll exceeded 30,000 by that time. And the article is about why it's an incomplete count. That is just what they were able to account for. They know there are tens of thousands of other people unaccounted for, right? So we knew that for a while, right? This article is February 29th. And here's an entire family that was wiped out. Let me see if I can read that. Iman Abu Said, far right, with her mother, sister Yakin, and father. Everyone in this photo was killed in an airstrike on October 31st, 2023. Okay. All right. So now here's an article about the World Central Kitchen workers killed in Israel. So let's see who was killed there. A dual U.S.-Canada national, a Palestinian. They had a Palestinian driver. 3 Brits, an Australian, and a Pole were killed by the IDF strike. So that's them. Now let's see if you can see what the difference is between the two sets of victims. So you had over 30,000 Palestinian victims the day before a mostly white crew of aid workers, which again, this is not in any way to denigrate their courage. I can't even imagine having the courage these people had. This is about who the media and who the political class will respond to the deaths of as opposed to others. They already knew there was this horrific genocide of Palestinian people, and they're dragging their feet. They don't want to say genocide, maybe a ceasefire, maybe not a ceasefire. As soon as a predominantly white group of aid workers was killed, well, you just saw the result. You just saw the result. All of those media stories were referencing this. Why weren't they referencing this family wiped out on the bottom? Why were they only referencing the ones at the top? So is this cherry picking? Is this unique? Well, no, it's not unique, because now this put together an interesting compilation of the way reporters reacted to the invasion of Ukraine. Now, it's funny because a lot of people will talk about how woke the media is, but that's really at a surface level. When you dig deep down, these are pretty privileged people from pretty privileged backgrounds who very often have exactly the kinds of biases that they want to cancel other people for. So let's take a look at this.
Relatively civilized.
They look like any European family.
Christians, they're white.
You know, this is a relatively civilized, relatively European, I have to choose those words carefully too, city where you wouldn't expect that or hope that it's going to happen.
When they say, civilized cities, in another clip, well-dressed people, and this is not the third world, they really mean white people, don't they?
Now with the Russians marching in, it's changed the calculus entirely. Tens of thousands of people have tried to flee the city. There will be many more. People are hiding out in bomb shelters. But this isn't a place, with all due respect, you know, like Iraq or Afghanistan, that has seen conflict raging for decades. You know, this is a relatively civilized, relatively European, I have to choose those words carefully too, city where you wouldn't expect that or hope that it's going to happen.
I haven't seen that guy since.
Wow, we're doing this to white people now.
Yep.
Hey, come on, doing it to Iraq for a couple of decades.
Now the unthinkable has happened.
The unthinkable has happened to doing it to white people.
To them. And this is not a developing third world nation. This is Europe.
Wow.
This is who these people actually are.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So as you're talking to us, Matthew, we're playing in the latest pictures of some of the refugees trying to get on trains or trying to get out of Ukraine. And what's compelling is just looking at them, the way they're dressed. These are prosperous, I'm going to use the expression, these are prosperous middle-class people. These are not obviously refugees trying to get away from areas in the Middle East that are still in a big state of war. These are not people trying to get away from areas in North Africa. They look like any European family that you would live next door to.
These are not refugees from Syria. These are refugees from neighboring Ukraine. I mean, that, quite frankly, is part of it.
Wow.
These are Christians, they're white.
Wow.
It's very emotional for me because I see European people with blue eyes and blonde hair being killed, children being killed every day with Putin's missiles.
Wow.
You know, that was exactly the way Hitler felt, actually.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
You know, about the poor, blonde, blue-eyed people. So this incident, which of course, you know, you rely on the media to tell you about these things, but they're not going to tell you about these things. This flared up a little bit, mostly in the alternative media, not a lot in the mainstream media, and then it completely disappeared. These same people who very often want to talk about how racist America is.
Yes.
They're the biggest racists.
Yes.
This is why I don't have a lot of tolerance for when working class people are defined as particularly racist.
Yes.
The people who are giving you that definition are the upper classes that control the conversation, who want to deflect attention from themselves. I didn't see like very overt racism until I went to college. I lived on a dorm where you had an African-American studies major in that university, was the only one in SUNY. And you also had, this was the kosher dorm. I sat down with a bunch of people from my suite who were Jewish. A bunch of black people sat down. They got up and left. I never experienced that at home. But they will not tell you that these things happen amongst their class. They'll deflect it always to the lower class. And these journalists are the ones who love to do a segment on, we were talking with Taibbi about white rural rage, about this book. They were all crazy about it. These are the same exact people who are crying about white people experiencing what these brown people they supposedly care so much about go through on a regular basis, have gone through for decades, largely because of Western foreign policy and meddling in their nations. You got anything, Keaton?
Yeah, no, I mean, I noticed that as soon as the Ukraine war started. I mean, that was a huge story that guy, said that and then, had to apologize. I forget if he actually kept his job or if they actually fired him or suspended him. But yeah, no, look, it's very obvious. And, we can't say that the World Central Kitchen strike is a momentum shifter, because the momentum was going against Israel before that, but it certainly was a breaking point. I mean, that certainly was the point at which the dam just broke, because now when you got Morning Joe doing segment after segment after segment, advocating for suspension of arms shipments to even sanctions. I mean, that's almost illegal to talk about sanctions against Israel in this country. I mean, there's states that have BDS laws on the books. So yeah, I mean, that's it. It's all fallen apart. And I think, a huge reason for it is because of what you mentioned. It's worthy versus unworthy victims.
All of a sudden, as soon as some victims that look like us got killed, all of a sudden, tremendous action on the part of the media. They could have been saying this all along. This is the same media that a few short months ago was calling pro-Palestine protesters anti-Semites and trying to drum up fear about rising anti-Semitism and never defining that outside of the movement to stop the genocide in Palestine. And all of a sudden, they've seen the light as soon as these aid workers were killed. You have anything, Jimmy?
I hadn't seen those clips. If I did, I was maybe still smoking pot. I don't remember. But
no, it's recent. It's very recent.
Wow, that is wow. First of all, great analysis. Exactly right. These are the people who tell you MAGA is racist. These are the people that rural Americans are racist, and these are the people like, hey, these are civilized people, not like those. The darkies, not like the darkies who've been bombing the shit out of them for the last 50 years and stealing their oil and slaughtering them indiscriminately and having guys like George Bush and Dick Cheney and Condoleezza Rice run a torture program on them. And oh my God, these aren't people from Venezuela. These aren't the El Salvador. These are whiteys. These are Christians. Yeah, that's I got to put that in the live show that we're going to do in Chicago in August. That's great.
To literally say blonde and blue.
Blonde, come on. This is the master race they're doing it to over here.
And that was a Ukrainian official, by the way, under Zelensky who said that. So tell me again how we're not funding Nazis in Ukraine.
Right. Exactly right. Hey, there's still tickets available in Stockholm, Oslo, Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, Cortland, New York, Oakmont, Pennsylvania, El Paso, Texas, San Antonio, Texas, Edmonton, Alberta, Vancouver, British Columbia, Denver, Ashland, Virginia, and Athens, Georgia. See you there.